Today I'm sitting with Peter George, who is the Executive Director of Arctic Minerals. Peter's got a 30-year history working in Sweden, dating back to working in Boliden with the Laisvall mine, Pettignes and Renström mines. And most recently you're also running Alicanto Minerals, which is an ASX gold, copper, silver explorer in Sala and Falun. Now, you've recently hit a major milestone for Arctic Minerals, bringing out the Maiden JORC compliant mineral resource estimate. Tell us, what does this mean for the company and what's next?
Yeah, thanks, John. Well, look, it's a significant milestone for us that we've taken a historic resource at Hennes Bay of around about 25 million tonnes at a bit over 1% copper equivalent to today, after I guess 2 years worth of work, where we were initially private through Rare Earth Energy Metals, and then of course the merger between Arctic and Rare Earth in October of last year, to now being able to put out that Maiden JORC resource for Hennes Bay. And what it means for us is that it's a, for those people that don't understand what JORC means, you know, it's a third-party independent review of all of the information that we have to be able to, for us to stand here in front of our investors and the market and say, well, this is what we have. It's not just an opinion. It's not something based on a historical work that was done back 50 years ago. This has been verified by a third-party resource geos, and as you can see from the numbers, it's significantly larger than the historic resource. So what that has meant is that the work that we've done, especially with Eric, you know, he's gone back and he's realised that a lot of the drilling that was done and the work that was done going back between the 50s and the 80s was really initially looking potentially for VMS style deposits. So it was quite tightly drilled. But you know, we now realise that we're dealing with a sedimentary hosted style deposit, which, if you compare that to other projects around the world, such as the White Pine in the US or the Copper Schiefer down there in Poland and Germany, or even the Big Ivanhoe projects over there in the Congo, these are consistent ore bodies that you can see over a significant surface area, yeah. And we believe that we can see the same thing here. So within this within our Maiden JORC resource, there's 6 ore bodies that are there. Well, I should say there are 6 mineralisations in there. Yep. We've taken the main one being Dingelvik, that makes up the lion's share of the JORC compliant resource. But there are a number of other smaller mineralisations, and when I say smaller mineralisations, they're only smaller because they have a limited amount of drilling. But we've taken a conservative view on those and not included those within the JORC resource yet, but we know that we can, well, we strongly believe that we can convert those into JORC with a minimal amount of extra drilling. So to be able to go from that 25 million tonnes to where we are today to over 50 million tonnes, that really gives me the opportunity now to say, all right, well, we can bank that and start our preliminary economic analysis on that. And I guess the project itself at Hennes Bay sort of splits now from being purely exploration play into being a development and an exploration play.
Okay, fantastic. So this historic resource, or this new resource you're doing, has been based off historic drilling. However, you guys went out and re-logged the core and re-assayed it, and that's what's allowing you to be able to use those historic numbers. What were the correlations between the historic core and the new assays? And also, what are the differences in the 3D modelling techniques? Because I understand this was done back in the 80s, this previous resource, so technology's taken a huge leap forwards in that time. Just if you could run us through, I guess, what's going on with the updates.
So what we did was as you said, a lot of the information that we had was on paper. So you know, these things are they're hand sketched, and the calculations are done all on paper. So we took all of that information, we've, like I said, re-logged a portion of the core, re-assayed a portion of the core that's sitting, this is the fantastic thing about operating in Sweden. A lot of this old core sits up there in Malå in northern Sweden. So the guys have crawled all over the top of that, re-logged it, like I said, re-assayed part of it, and put all of the information into Leapfrog. And obviously with the power of computing and software that we have available to us today, which wasn't available, even 20 years ago. You could really see this thing leaping out at the page at you as to what it looks like, and we'll combine that with the field work that our geos have done in looking at the outcrops that we can see, and we also have we've logged grab samples nearly 20 kilometres away of what we believe to be exactly the same mineralisation. So we know that this thing is extensionally could be huge. So what we have here within our tenement package, we've really only explored 5% of the tenement itself. As I mentioned, there are 6 mineralised bodies, with the Dingelvik being the main one that makes up the majority of the actual JORC resource itself. But with minimal amount of work, on Dingelvik itself and on the other mineralisations, we think we can grow this thing quite significantly with a minimal amount of work, really.
Absolutely. So, as far as the depth of this resource and the structural architecture, as much as you can go into it, could you give us a background of what's going on kind of structurally?
Yeah. So, I mean, I won't insult the geos out there by going into too much geology, because you'll trip me up. But the work that Eric and the team have done is top notch. They've taken all of the historic geophysical data that's been run by the state, had a look. So Eric's had a good deep dive into what he believes to be the structures within the area and how the system itself looks, and we're of the opinion that the ore bodies actually quite distal to the source of the mineralisation itself that hasn't actually been discovered yet. So, and we have other indications that this may well be the case, such as the grades and the minerals and metals that were pulled out of the Storstrand project. So that actually had quite high gold grade sitting within it as well, which we haven't seen within Dingelvik, for example, or the other mineralised zones, which we believe are distal. So we have some theories over the proximal part, and we're now going through the planning phase for what we're going to do next. We're looking at potentially some 3D inverse modelling of the data to give us again with the modern software and computing power that we have, and then potentially rolling into some MTM surveys either this year or next year before we commit to a larger drilling program.
Okay, yeah, you're taking it step by step before you jump in there and go crazy with the rig.
Well, we're in a very advantageous situation at the moment, because we have this resource now which we can bank, right? So I can now roll that part of it straight into doing a preliminary economic analysis. You can start doing the design, start doing the economic analysis over all of that and the schedule, and really give our investors in the market a very strong flavour of what this could potentially be as a mine, even though we believe that there is even better stuff to be found within this particular project.
Okay. You mentioned Storstrand. Just wanted to dig into that a little bit more, because that actually was a historic mine itself, mining copper, and they were getting some pretty impressive grades out of that, kind of up towards 1.5%. Are you thinking that is part of the same system that's over to the west in Dingelvik?
Yeah, well, it's to be determined, really. There are a couple of different theories as to whether or not Storstrand sits on a different structure than what the other mineralisations do, but we have some theories that we're wanting to test, and it probably won't go into that too much today because Eric will kill me. But we're developing some really strong models in house that we're wanting to test with the geophysics, and then test further with the drilling into the future. But that we can see some faulting through the historic geophysical data that we can see there, and that with that potential faulting, that could well be the source itself that sits. So, and that's what's lending us towards thinking that the ore bodies that we currently have are distal from the main source of the mineralisation, and because we're not seeing the gold. I think it's quite typical for the gold to sort of drop out closer to the source in these type of systems. Yeah. So, lots of little hints as to what's going on yet, but as mentioned, we've got a fantastic head start with the resource that we have. The project now splits into two, with the development phase, but then also the exploration phase will continue as we go over the next few years.
Okay, I won't grill you any more about the geology side of it. However, you are a mining engineer, so if this thing was to go ahead and be mined, would it be, what type of mining method would you be running?
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, it's when I first started looking at this, it reminded me a lot of, i.e. the type of mining that they do down there in the Kopparschiefer and even up in mining up in Larsvall in the north of Sweden, and what they're doing over there in a lot of these sedimentary hosted copper style deposits. So I guess primarily it would be like a room and pillar style operation. But what we've also started to see, because of some of the structures, is that in some areas it's actually standing up vertical as well. So it will be a combination of some sub-level stoping and room and pillar, and potentially even a couple of different things in between. But what I like about it is, from a mining engineering perspective, is the consistency of the mineralisation over a large area. So I'm looking at this more as a potential rock factory as compared to a mine, where you can have multiple mines sitting within the same system, just like what they do down in the Kopparschiefer, for example. And so you can scale up your operation or scale it down to whatever you want to do from a practical and from an economic perspective. So, but in my mind, at this early stage, without having gone into the PEA, well, we're really only just studying the PEA now. In my mind, I'm really after that sort of 3 million to 5 million tonne per annum style operation, which, obviously with these types of tonnages that we have here, getting it up over between 10 and 20 years to begin with, but also keeping in mind that we've only tested 5% of the tenement here. So this could be a multi-decade project in its own right.
Okay.
And then, but once I've got those sort of ideas in my head as to what it is I want to achieve, it's then up to us to demonstrate that this is potentially real with the PEA. So I hope to get that out later in the year and demonstrate to our investors and to the market as to what the potential is from that stage.
Okay. So from the backing point of view, I guess, from investors, where is most of the money coming from to back this project, and how are you planning to fund it going forwards?
Yeah, I mean, that's always an interesting scenario. A lot of my experience has come from operating on the ASX, so it's a little bit of a different market over there now that we're based on the Stockholm Exchange. It's been an interesting exercise for me to work out how a lot of these things are being funded. I mean, I look at it's probably easy to compare the journey that Viscaria has been on over the last 5-6 years here, that they took their Viscaria project from, I think it was Avalon or Sunstone Metals on the ASX at a very low market capitalisation. That was then rolled into Viscaria, and then you can see at Viscaria how the share prices has jumped every time they've hit a milestone where they've released PEAs and pre-feasibility studies. They've then hit their milestones with their mining permits and their environmental permits and various. So these guys have been the poster child for how to do it in Sweden. So I'm not proposing to do anything different with regards to how the process. And then as far as how you fund these things, look, there is a lot of high net worth and a lot of desire to get involved in these sorts of projects from an investment community perspective, and I've learnt a lot about and met a lot of people in recent times that are very interested in coming on and want to get in early. So I guess that doesn't 100% answer your question on how you finance, but
No.
obviously we raise money as junior mining or junior exploration companies on the market. Obviously, every time we raise money, we want to do that at a higher share price. So, and the only way to get a high share price is to get out there and just do very high quality technical work like what we're doing. So with the Maiden JORC resource coming out, that's our first milestone as a major tick for us to get up and running after 2 years worth of work to get to this point. The PEA, hopefully we'll get that out towards the latter half of the year. That will be another milestone and a major selling point for us, and then also a number of the other, I guess, softer side of things, being looking into the environmental aspects and the cultural and stakeholder aspects of getting operations up and running in this part of the world.
Great. Okay, so yeah, you've got your main resource out. We're expecting to wrap some financial figures around it with the PEA later on in the year. There's potentially some geophysics going on in the background while you're sussing out these targets, and then we should be seeing a drill rig again at some point.
So look, as far as the drilling is concerned, look, I could roll the drill rigs out tomorrow, and expand on the known mineralisation and ore bodies that we currently already have. But I think with the amount that we have, I'm quite comfortable with being able to start the PEA already now. So from a development perspective, that gives me that 10-year runway for that 3 to 5 million tonne style operations already today. So I don't need to rush. It's because of the consistent style of this mineralisation. I know that I can step out 500 metres and I've got a pretty good chance of hitting the same thing that we had within the ore bodies and grow that resource significantly. It then comes down to a balance as to, well, how many tonnes do you actually need to have before you start to put more physical things into place, such as getting projects up and running. So there's, I'm quite confident that we'll still be drilling this particular project in 20 years' time. But that's not necessarily what's going to create the maximum amount of value for our shareholders. So, so I think it's more prudent to us to go off and do this further work on the geophysics, really lock into those particular areas where we want to drill, and get a good plan around where we believe there could be I guess the source and more proximal part of the system. See if we can find some more of this gold. See if we can find some more high grade copper, which is only going to add to the story and to the potential economics of this project. I mean, I'm quite convinced that even with these grades and tonnes that we have, that this will be economic when I compare that to other projects around the place. So we're talking about mining from near to surface down to a couple of 100 metres underground. So and on top of that, with the type of ore bodies that we have, the amount of capital investment that I need to put into declines and a lot of those is going to be less than a lot of other type of projects, because potentially I could even put some of our capital development within ore, for example. And so I'm quite excited about the numbers that we're gonna get out and what that's going to demonstrate to the market going forward.
So you've got plenty of old drill core that you've managed to get access to. Are you going to be doing any metallurgical work on this to see your recovery rates?
Yeah. Oh, well, look, that's a good question. So there is a historical reports there which we will probably which we could reference and utilise going forward, and started another project quite recently where we're actually looking into that and trying to get hold of 15 to 30 kilos worth of core, send that off to the lab and actually start to do a number of these type of tests on how we would potentially treat or process these type of ores. I mean, we believe it's going to be quite simple. There's quite a number of operations around the world that get very high recoveries on their copper, silver, and then the gold, of course. But that particular project started off more from a subject that we haven't really touched on, which is we have the gallium and the germanium and the vanadium that sits in there as byproducts within this project as well, which is, I don't necessarily feel like I need those metals to make this project economically viable, and mostly because the majority of the income, and I'd say high 90% is going to come from the copper and the silver. So these things will add the small parts, but from a political perspective, they're very interesting because of the fact that the majority of these are controlled by China, and they've put the brakes on the rest of the world getting access to these things. So we potentially could be sitting on a significant amount of these particular metals, especially the gallium and the germanium. So we started this metallurgical project just on, well, how do we take advantage of these things? Where do they appear within the process? Will they appear within the copper silver concentrate, or will they appear within the sphalerite part of the tail which is going out? We actually don't know, but we're starting that metallurgical project. We started that in the last couple of weeks, together with how are we going to actually get out a concentrate, and then also looking at what sort of how the process water is going to be, what that's going to look like at the end of the system, because obviously from an environmental perspective that's extremely important for us and for our stakeholders to understand what all of that means. So look, I don't necessarily need that information to go ahead with the PEA, I think, at this stage, but it's going to be very important for us to, in our own minds, work out what it means, and then obviously rolling into the next phase being the pre-feasibility study. So that's going to become the metallurgy become an important part of that going forward.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, if you've got a credit of some extra goodies, might as well try to take advantage of them. Okay, well, it's been great sitting down with you today, Pete, again, and we look forward to some more news flow coming out of Arctic soon.
Absolutely, look forward to it.
Cheers.
Thanks.